Look at that shiny tail fin gleaming on the tarmac. You think you are looking at a world-class airline. You think you are seeing the ultimate pride of American aviation. Honestly, that is a massive L ratio detected right there. Most of you still think American Airlines sells flights from point A to point B. Wrong. Absolute skill issue on your part if you believe that. They do not sell seats. They sell credit card points to massive banks, and then they use your cramped middle seat as a literal hostage just to make the math work. While Delta and United are out there printing absolute stacks of cash in their shiny premium lounges, American Airlines has been stuck in the world's most pathetic identity crisis for decades. We are talking about $35 billion in the hole. That is $35 billion with a B. Their crew just voted no confidence in the CEO because the vibes in the cockpit are officially rancid. And what is the big plan to fix this sinking ship? They are tossing some Lavazza coffee and some slightly fluffier pillows at the problem. It is pure corporate cope. They are trying to gaslight you into thinking a fresh coat of paint can hide a structural collapse. You are not a passenger to them. You are a line item in a debt restructuring deal. You are a data point for Citibank. If you think your loyalty is being rewarded with those miles, you are just getting played by the house. This is not an airline, it is a high-interest debt trap with wings. They have spent years pretending to be a premium carrier while delivering a budget bus experience. They have been chasing the ghost of their former glory while their balance sheet looks like a slow-motion train wreck. The reality is that American Airlines is a bank that happens to operate a fleet of aging Boeings as a tax write-off and a marketing expense. They are betting everything on the hope that you will not notice the cracks in the fuselage as long as they offer you a fancy nut mix in first class. But we see through the noise. We see the 35 billion reasons why this company is on the brink. Are you tired of being the product while they pretend to be the service provider? Good. Because it is time to look under the hood of this financial disaster and see who is really pulling the levers. Ready to shift? Let's dive into the mechanism of the world's biggest flying debt trap. Welcome to the middle child syndrome of the sky. If the major airlines were a high school movie, Delta would be the rich kid with the designer suit and a country club membership. United would be the tech bro who somehow knows everyone in Silicon Valley. And American Airlines? American is the kid who keeps changing his personality every week because he has no idea who he actually is. One day he is wearing a tuxedo to a backyard barbecue, and the next day he is showing up to a gala in flip-flops. This is the fundamental identity crisis that has turned American Airlines into the ultimate mid-tier experience. They have spent the last decade trapped in a cycle of absolute confusion, and it is costing them everything. Let us break down the mechanism of this failure. For years, American Airlines could not decide if they wanted to be a global premium powerhouse or a glorified domestic bus service. While Delta was busy gatekeeping the premium market by investing billions into their Delta One suites and high-end lounges, American was busy playing a different game. They thought they could win by being everywhere at once, dominating hubs like Dallas-Fort Worth and Charlotte where they have a near monopoly. They figured, hey, if people in Texas have no other choice but to fly us, why bother making the service actually good? That is peak NPC energy right there. They settled for being the default option instead of being the desired option. But then the market shifted. The 2030s arrived, and suddenly everyone has premium FOMO. Post-pandemic travel trends showed that people are actually willing to pay stupid amounts of money for a lie-flat bed and a glass of champagne that does not taste like battery acid. Delta and United saw this coming. They doubled down on the luxury experience. American Airlines, on the other hand, was caught with their metaphorical pants down. They spent years focusing on basic economy and squeezing as many seats as possible into their narrow body planes. They were chasing the Spirit Airlines and Southwest crowd while wearing a legacy carrier badge. It was a massive skill issue that allowed their competitors to run away with the most profitable demographic in the world, the high-spending business traveler. Now we are seeing the panic. This is where the premium FOMO hits the fan. American Airlines recently announced they are ditching long-haul first class to make room for their new flagship suites. They are trying to rebrand themselves as a premium-heavy airline overnight. But here is the catch. You cannot just slap some privacy doors on a seat and call yourself a luxury brand when your entire corporate culture has been focused on cutting costs for a decade. It is like a fast food joint trying to sell a $50 steak. You know it is still the same kitchen, the same overworked staff, and the same management that thinks a 5% raise is a generous gift. The financial numbers behind this pivot are absolutely wild. We are talking about billions of dollars in capital expenditure just to play catch-up. And remember, they are doing this while sitting on a mountain of debt that totals $35 billion. Imagine having $35 billion in credit card debt and deciding that the solution is to go out and buy a fleet of Ferraris so you can start a high-end limo service. That is the level of delusion we are dealing with. They are betting that the premium revenue will eventually pay off the interest on their massive loans. But while they are waiting for those new seats to be installed, which will take years by the way, their competitors are already light years ahead. This identity crisis also bled into their sales strategy. Have you heard about their new distribution capability, or NDC? They tried to force travel agents and corporate booking tools to use their proprietary system by withholding their best fares from the old systems. They thought they had the main character energy to dictate how the entire industry works. Spoiler alert, it backfired. They alienated the very people who sell their most expensive tickets. It was a classic case of corporate gaslighting, telling the industry that this was for their own good while actually just trying to avoid paying commissions. They ended up losing the market share and had to walk back the strategy with their tails between their legs. The CEO even had to admit they moved too fast and broke things. That is a massive L for a company that thinks it is a leader. So now American is stuck. They are too expensive to compete with the budget airlines on price, and they are too mid to compete with Delta on service. They are in the dead zone of the market. They are trying to buy their way out of this hole by ordering hundreds of new planes from Boeing and Airbus. They are basically trying to buy a new personality because the old one is bankrupt. This is the premium FOMO mechanism in action. It is a desperate, late-game pivot by a company that realized too late that being the biggest does not mean being the best. Every time you see an ad for their new suites, remember the $35 billion and remember the years of mediocre service. Remember the fact that they are only doing this because they are scared of losing the last few loyal customers they have left. They are not doing it for you, they are doing it because their survival depends on convincing a few more rich people to help them pay down their interest. It is a cynical, calculated move to stay relevant in a world that is moving on without them. They are chasing a vibe they never cultivated, and the result is a brand that feels like a hollow shell of its former self. Let us get one thing straight. If you still think American Airlines is a company that flies people places, you are living in a simulation. It is time to wake up. American Airlines is not an aviation company. It is a massive, high-stakes bank that happens to operate a fleet of metal tubes as a very expensive marketing campaign. Their actual business model is not selling tickets from New York to London. Their actual business is selling little digital tokens called AAdvantage miles to Citibank and Barclays. That is the real juice. The planes? They are just the overhead. The pilots? They are the delivery drivers for the digital currency. This is the ultimate pivot, and it is the only reason the company is not currently a smoking crater in the middle of a bankruptcy court. Think about the sheer audacity of this mechanism. During the pandemic, when the world stopped moving and every airline was down bad, American Airlines did something fascinating. They did not look at their planes for value. They looked at you. More specifically, they looked at your loyalty. They appraised their AAdvantage program and realized it was worth way more than the actual airline itself. We are talking about a valuation of over $20 billion for a bunch of digital points, while the company's market cap was struggling to stay afloat. They used your frequent flyer miles as collateral to take on even more debt. They basically pawned your future vacations to pay for their current mistakes. That is some serious main character energy, but not the good kind. Now, let us talk about the $35 billion anchor tied around their neck. $35 billion in total debt. To put that in perspective, that is more than the entire gross domestic product of some small countries. While their competitors like Delta and United have been aggressively paying down their pandemic-era loans, American is still drowning. They are paying billions of dollars every single year just in interest. Imagine working a full-time job and every single cent you make on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday goes straight to the bank just to pay the interest on your credit cards. You are not even touching the principal. You are just running on a treadmill that is tilted upward at a 45-degree angle. That is the reality of American Airlines. Their profit margins are paper thin because the banks are eating their lunch, their dinner, and their midnight snacks. This is where the skill issue becomes a structural fail. Because they are so deeply in debt, they have no choice but to keep the loyalty engine pumping at maximum speed. They need you to open that Citi executive card. They need you to spend money on groceries and gas and overpriced lattes so they can sell more miles to the banks. They have turned their passengers into a farm for data and transaction fees. But here is the gaslighting part. While they are begging you to stay loyal, they are constantly devaluing the very miles you earn. It is called dynamic pricing. But let us call it what it really is, a stealth tax on your loyalty. One day a flight to Hawaii is 30,000 miles, the next day it is 80,000. Why? Because they can. They control the printing press of this digital currency and they are inflating it into oblivion to keep their creditors happy. It is a classic rug pull, but they do it so slowly you barely feel the sting until you try to book a trip. The irony is delicious. American Airlines is essentially a subsidized bank that is too big to fail. They know the government will not let them go under because they are a critical part of the national infrastructure. This creates a massive moral hazard. They can afford to be mediocre because they have a safety net made of taxpayer dollars and credit card interest. They are the ultimate corporate welfare queen, masquerading as a titan of industry. They are betting on the fact that you are too lazy to switch to a better airline and too addicted to your points to realize you are being played. They are counting on your inertia. And let us look at the numbers. Their net income is a joke compared to their revenue. They bring in tens of billions of dollars but keep almost none of it. Why? Because the interest on that $35 billion is a monster that never sleeps. Every time the Federal Reserve even thinks about raising interest rates, the executives at American Airlines probably have a collective heart attack. They are walking a tightrope over a canyon of insolvency, and the only thing keeping them balanced is the billions of dollars Citibank writes them as a check every quarter for those sweet, sweet miles. It is a cycle of desperation. They need more debt to buy new planes to keep the illusion of a premium airline alive, which requires more miles to be sold to the banks to pay for the debt. It is a financial human centipede. They are eating their own tail just to stay in the race. And you? You are just the fuel for the engine. You are the one paying the annual fees and the high interest rates on the credit cards that keep this whole house of cards from collapsing. American Airlines is not flying you to your destination. They are flying you toward a financial cliff while telling you to enjoy the free pretzels. It is the ultimate corporate cope, and the bill is eventually going to come due. Now let us talk about the absolute disaster happening inside the cabin and the cockpit. This is where the corporate spreadsheets meet reality, and honestly, the vibes are officially rancid. In the world of high-stakes aviation, there is a term we use called reliability. It is the invisible glue that keeps an airline from turning into a chaotic bus station. But at American Airlines, that glue has completely dried up, because the people who actually run the airline, the pilots and the flight attendants, have officially checked out. Why? They are not just unhappy. They are in a state of open revolt. This is the labor mutiny mechanism, and it is the final nail in the coffin for any hope of a premium turnaround. Let us look at the leadership. CEO Robert Isom is playing a very dangerous game of chicken with his own employees. Recently, the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, or the APFA, passed a vote of no confidence in the leadership. Do you understand how bad that is? That is the equivalent of the entire crew of the Titanic telling the captain they think he is a clown while the iceberg is already scraping the hull. When your frontline staff, the people who have to deal with angry passengers in cramped middle seats, officially say they do not trust the person at the top, the game is over. It is a massive L ratio for the corporate culture. The logic here is simple but devastating. It all comes back to the money. Remember that $35 billion in debt we talked about? Because American Airlines is drowning in interest payments, their net profit margins are pathetic. They are scraping the bottom of the barrel while Delta and United are throwing massive profit-sharing checks at their employees. In 2024 and 2025, Delta pilots and flight attendants were walking around with fat bonuses because their company was actually making money. Meanwhile, at American, the staff got a pat on the back and a reminder that the company is still trying to turn things around. That is pure gaslighting. You cannot ask your employees to provide 5-star service when you are paying them 3-star wages and giving them 0-star respect. This creates a massive reliability crisis. When employees feel like they are being exploited to pay off a bank's interest, they stop going the extra mile. They do the bare minimum. They follow the rules to the letter just to spite management. This is called quiet quitting on a grand scale. And who suffers? You do. Every time your flight is delayed for a mechanical issue that somehow takes 4 hours to fix, or every time a flight is canceled because a crew timed out and nobody was willing to pick up the extra shift, that is the labor mutiny in action. The staff is not motivated to save the day for a company that does not value them. They are tired of being the shock absorbers for a broken business model. And let us talk about the premium contradiction. American Airlines is spending billions on these new flagship suites and fancy Lavazza coffee. They want to convince the Wall Street suits that they are a luxury brand. But here is the reality check. You can put all the champagne and caviar you want in a shiny new plastic pod, but if the flight attendant serving it looks like they want to scream because they have not had a fair contract in 5 years, the luxury experience is dead on arrival. You cannot buy a premium vibe. You have to earn it through culture. And right now, the culture at American Airlines is toxic. It is a workplace where the employees feel like they are at war with the executives. The pilots are even more fed up. They see the mismanagement from the flight deck. They see the scheduling software glitches that leave crews stranded in hotels for days. They see the aging fleet of Boeing 737 aircraft that need constant maintenance. They know the company is a house of cards held together by Citibank credit card points. When a pilot does not trust their CEO, they are not going to push the aircraft to make up for lost time. They are going to prioritize their contract and their safety, as they should, but the efficiency of the airline craters as a result. It is a complete structural fail. Robert Isom keeps talking about 2026 being the turnaround year. He is telling investors that the labor issues will be resolved and the new premium seats will bring in the cash. But that is just corporate cope. You cannot fix years of systemic neglect and bad blood with a single contract or a new seat map. The trust is gone. The employees know that the executives are just trying to keep the stock price high enough to cash out their own bonuses before the whole thing implodes. It is a classic case of the elite versus the workers, and in the airline industry, the workers always have the last laugh because they are the ones who actually make the planes fly. If you are a passenger, you are caught in the crossfire of this civil war. You are paying premium prices for a service that is being delivered by people who are one step away from a walkout. Every time you board an American Airlines flight, you are entering a zone of high tension. The smiles are forced, the service is rushed, and the overall energy is just off. This is why they are losing the premium war. Delta and United have staff that actually believe in the mission. American has a workforce that is just waiting for the next strike vote. It is a skill issue at the highest level of management. They forgot that an airline is a service business, not just a debt rebalancing act. So the next time you see a commercial for American Airlines, look past the shiny planes and the smiling models. Think about the thousands of flight attendants who voted no confidence. Think about the pilots who are tired of being treated like numbers on a spreadsheet. Think about the $35 billion that is being prioritized over the people who do the work. The labor mutiny is not just a side story. It is the heart of why this company is a flying debt trap. Without the people, the planes are just expensive paperweights, and right now, the people are done. So here we are at the end of the runway. This is the moment where we stop looking at the shiny marketing brochures and start looking at the cold, hard math. American Airlines wants you to believe that 2026 is the year of the great comeback. They want you to think that they have finally figured out the secret sauce to beat Delta and United. But let us be real for a second. That is not a strategy. That is pure corporate cope. It is a fairy tale told to shareholders so they do not dump the stock and leave the executives holding an empty bag. We have looked at the mechanisms, we have seen the debt, and we have felt the rancid vibes from the crew. Now, it is time for the final verdict. Let us talk about the $35 billion elephant in the room one last time. $35 billion. If American Airlines somehow managed to clear $1 billion in pure profit every single year, which they are currently struggling to do, it would still take them 35 years just to pay off the principal. That does not even include the interest, which is currently eating them alive. This is not a company that is growing. This is a company that is managed for the benefit of its creditors. When you buy a ticket on American Airlines, you are not funding a flight. You are funding a debt service payment for a massive bank. You are essentially paying a tax to Citibank and Barclays for the privilege of sitting in a cramped metal tube that smells like stale pretzels in desperation. The idea that they can just pivot to being a premium airline is the ultimate gaslighting. Brand identity is not something you can buy with a new seat contract from Boeing. It is something you build over decades of consistent excellence. Delta did it. United is doing it. American Airlines spent those same decades cutting corners, alienating their staff, and treating their customers like cargo that talks back. You cannot just flip a switch and expect the high-end business traveler to come crawling back. Those travelers have memories. They remember the canceled flights, the rude service, and the broken seats. They have already moved their loyalty to airlines that actually treat them like human beings. American is trying to enter a luxury race with a broken leg and a massive backpack full of lead bricks. It is a total skill issue. And what about the investors? If you are looking at the stock price and thinking it is a bargain, you are likely becoming someone else's exit liquidity. The executives at American Airlines are masters of the narrative. They will talk about revenue per available seat mile and load factors until your eyes bleed. But look at the net margin. Look at what is left after the banks take their cut. It is almost nothing. They are running the world's most complicated nonprofit organization. They are a massive wealth transfer machine, taking money from passengers and handing it straight to the bondholders. If you invest in this, you are not betting on a turnaround. You are betting that the government will continue to subsidize a failing business model because it is too big to fail. That is not an investment. That is a prayer. The cold reality is that American Airlines is a bank with wings that has forgotten how to be an airline. They are so focused on the loyalty points and the credit card revenue that they have neglected the actual product. And the product is the flight. It is the service. It is the reliability. When those things fail, the entire house of cards starts to shake. You can have the best credit card deal in the world, but if your planes do not take off on time and your staff is on the verge of a strike, people will eventually find another way to get where they are going. The moat they thought they had with their hub monopolies is shrinking as competitors move in and passengers become more savvy. This is the mechanism of a legacy giant in its twilight years. They are too big to pivot quickly, too indebted to innovate, and too arrogant to admit they have lost the plot. They are betting everything on a rebrand that feels like a costume. They are putting on a tuxedo over a pair of dirty sweatpants. The 2026 turnaround is not a promise. It is a prayer for a miracle that is likely not coming. The labor issues will linger, the debt will continue to compound, and the premium market will continue to be dominated by those who actually invested in it when it mattered. So, what is the play for you, the viewer? If you are a passenger, stop being a loyalist to a brand that sees you as a debt instrument. Use your points, cash them out, and look for the best experience, not the most points. Do not let them gaslight you into staying in a toxic relationship just because you have a plastic card with their logo on it. If you are an observer of the markets, watch the interest rates and the labor contracts. Those are the only numbers that actually matter. Everything else is just marketing noise designed to keep the engine humming for one more quarter. American Airlines is the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when financial engineering takes priority over operational excellence. They shifted their gears toward the banks and forgot about the sky. Now they are stuck in a high-interest debt trap with no easy exit. They are flying through a storm of their own making, and the fuel is running low. They will keep telling you that clear skies are just ahead, but look at the radar. The radar shows 35 billion reasons why this flight is not going to have a happy landing. They are hoping you stay distracted by the new pillows and the fancy coffee. They are hoping you do not notice the no confidence votes and the shrinking margins, but you are watching money gear shift. You know how the mechanism works. You see the gears grinding. You see the smoke coming from the engine. Do not be the one holding the bag when the wheels finally come off. The era of the legacy carrier that can be everything to everyone is over. The future belongs to those who can actually deliver a product worth paying for, not those who are just the best at managing a debt pile. That is the cold verdict. No hope, just numbers. No fluff, just the facts. American Airlines is a flying debt trap. And the trap is closing. You have been warned. The shift is happening, whether they are ready for it or not. Make sure you are on the right side of the gear when it finally clicks into place. That's it for today. Stay sharp and keep shifting. You know the drill. Like and subscribe.